All right. Can everybody hear me? I'm just hello, everybody. Everyone logging in from India and around the world. Our topic today is how do you build your personal brand and scale it on the emerging new web. We have had a technical difficulty in connecting with our guest speaker, so we're going to have Ritesh Mehta, the co-founder of Scroll, and me have a discussion about this topic. And so to kick off, uh, I want to sort of highlight what we think is the state of what we would call the passion economy or the creative economy. And for individuals who are participating in it, the choices they face in 2021 are that many of you have built a large following on social media, yet it is really hard to monetize that audience. It is very difficult to find revenue through advertising. It is very difficult to charge your followers, and most important of all, even monetization is a second step. Even if you really just wanted to make sure that you actually control your audience, you're able to reach them when you want to, you're able to send them an email when you want to. The entire reach is controlled by black box algorithms and the big tech platforms. So this is sort of the paradox of the creative economy. On the one hand, we have huge followership for individuals. On the other hand, it is really difficult to make anything concrete out of it. And this is the problem that many of us are trying to solve, ScrollStack being one of the approaches for it. And that the way we thought about our personal brands or creators thought about their personal brands even a few years ago versus how they think about it today should be very different is the way our argument, and already some creators are following in that. So what I mean by that is, if you have 1 million followers on Instagram, what does it really mean? How should you think about your personal brand today? And then the second thing is that what are the alternatives? How should you, again, this is not just about the new creative platforms. People often have websites. People have spent money on creating their own media sites. How all of this interacts with each other, and what should you do? That is the topic of the discussion today. I will kick off with let Ritesh sort of describe how he thinks of the passion economy and the creative economy. What does it mean to build your personal brand in this?
All right. Thanks, Samir. Hi, everybody. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you guys are. I think, as Samir mentioned, I'm Ritesh. I'm one of the co-founders of ScrollStack along with Samir. The fact that we are talking about building and scaling your personal brand is a testament of the times that we live in, right? Because there was no such thing as a personal brand, right? If you think about 10, 12, 15 years ago, only celebrities, CEO, big sports personalities, actors, singers had personal brands. And people like you and I, people like us had no options, right, to create a personal brand. Or if you wanted to, you actually would spend a lot of money, right, trying to, put a newspaper sort of like advertisement, or hire a PR firm because you want to do damage control to your brand and all of that stuff. There was no such thing as being able to build a personal brand. So the fact that anybody from any part of the world today can actually look at this as a very viable option, that I have some skill, some talent, if I have something to say in the world which I think other people might find useful, the fact that I can go out and build a personal brand today is a fantastic opportunity in itself. right? And also within the creator community and passion community, we've never had it better, right? So for example, you have three platforms that are used by billions of people that are absolutely free to you, right? For you to be able to build your personal brand, which is Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and the most powerful of them all, WhatsApp, right? You have these amazing platforms on which you can actually talk to, a lot of people that you may know or may not know. You can go ahead and start building your brand and actually start to figure out that there is an audience out there for what you have to say, or what you have to show, or what you have to sing, or what you have to play. Whatever type of a creator you are, or an aspiring creator, the fact that you have these tools to your at your disposal to be able to get an audience with which you can build a brand is actually a phenomenal opportunity. And we are at a place and a time, in the history of, like, I wouldn't say humankind, but at least in our sort of like living times, where this opportunity is unparalleled. It's unprecedented for sure. Add to that sort of like tools that are available to you, and ScrollStack is one of them, that help creators sort of like take their brand building to the next level, is actually phenomenal as well. And the fact that Samir and I and then the rest of the team can get together and actually start to build these things out and have that be a reality, and have that be in a position where it can change how things work, and how people create their brands and actually monetize their brands for millions of creators around the world. Again, absolutely amazing that we live in times and a place where we have these opportunities for us, right? For me, right, and I've actually seen this from almost since its inception, right? I've spent the last 16 years in tech at companies that have been at the forefront of giving these tools and creating these tools for individuals, where individuals have become creators, and creators have become influencers, and influencers have become celebrities, and that whole cycle, right? The fact that these tools exist, and then everybody has access to it, is a great tool, but it also makes it all that more difficult, right? So now the same tools that you and I have access to, there are 6 billion people in the world who also have access to these tools. So how do you really stand out, in terms of how do you start, like, what is your brand, right? I think, and one thing, having worked with a lot of creators and others around the world for the last few years, one thing that I have learned, right, the best people who have actually managed to build a very successful brand, they've been themselves on all platforms that they exist on, which means that they don't necessarily try and sort of think too seriously and say, I want to build a brand X or a brand Y for myself. I actually, like, the best brands are built by being who you are. And I'm actually drawing on celebrities because they are most recognizable. But I think if you let's say if you are in India, and if you know cricketers, right, the best person who is an epitome of somebody who has built their own brand by being themselves is actually Virendra Sehwag. Right, he's done a fantastic job of being the carefree cavalier person that he was on the ground, on social media as well, where he's sort of like been out there in front of people, saying what comes to his mind, being funny, but at the same time being incisive. He hasn't tried to paint a different persona for himself, like some of the other cricketers have, and who have gotten in trouble for that. He hasn't done that. He's actually been himself, and created a brand for himself through that. Right, there are countless examples of that. I'm on our platform itself, right? Like on ScrollStack, I see a lot of creators who take great pride in the work that they create. They have a very unique perspective in the language that they write in, right? They are not worried about how many people will actually be able to understand the language that they write in, but they're actually going out there and writing. They're not worried about how many people will buy, they're not worried about how many people will read, but they're essentially focused on what they have to say, and whether they're saying it in the best possible way or not. I think are some of those examples, right? So for example, uh, uh, there is an account on ScrollStack for a creator named Anisha. She writes under snopster.scrollstack.com. She does these amazing movie reviews or web series reviews that are phenomenal. Right? Again, it's not your run of the mill, you have to watch this absolutely great. She actually has a great humorous take with it, but with an analysis built into it. So it's not your run of the mill movie review or web series review, right? Great. And she doesn't just do your hoity-toity fancy Western shows, right? She will pick regular Indian shows as well. Like for example, her take on I think there's a show on Netflix called Bollywood Vibes or something. Her take on that is fantastic, right? So essentially, like for me, I think one of the big learnings that I have had on essentially through my time is being authentic and representing your own voice. While it might be difficult and it might be the harder way to take, but it's actually been the most successful thing for people to be able to build their brand, whether that's people who are famous or not famous, or individuals who were never famous but with their either out of the box thinking or being brash or being honest has essentially gotten them there. Pleasing people is never the easiest way, or sort of it might be the easiest way, but it's never sort of like the best way or the fastest way to sort of get to where you want to. So I think the biggest thing that I've learned is essentially being authentic, and putting that in front of everything else when you are trying to build a brand and scale your brand on social media and other creator platforms.
So I'll interrupt now. And so, one of the things that you have seen, whether it's at Facebook and WhatsApp and Instagram, the three very different platforms for creators and very different scale, even in India, WhatsApp being so large. How do you, like, what is it that these different groups, and how will they transition, right? So, for example, to WhatsApp is 256 maximum. Instagram has millions of, followers. That some 200 million people with 10,000 followers. How do you see these different groups emerging into the passion economy, right? And so yeah, so I'll sort of stop at that.
Sure. Yes, and I think this is a very interesting sort of paradigm on which things are actually shifting, right? So each platform, we'll just talk about Facebook, WhatsApp, and Instagram, and they all serve very different purposes. To me, right, as I said earlier as well, to me, WhatsApp is actually the most powerful of them all, right? Because and that answers the question somewhat to Samir what you asked, which is how many are sort of enough, or how many followers should you have, and how should it work and all. I don't think it matters, right, in terms of how many followers you have. I think it each platform, WhatsApp is most powerful to me because even with a small number of followers, the fact that this could be the most loyal followers that you've ever had will actually take you the furthest, because they will then, let's say if they really believe in what you've said, they will send it to 10 other people, 15 other people, 20 other people, 50 other people, 256 other people, right? And while one group can have 256, we know, right, Indians, those of us who are here and everywhere else, we are part of 20 groups, 50 groups. So we are prolific with our group creation and group joining and group sharing, right? So the way information spreads on WhatsApp, it might be the fastest way to actually get your word out there to your most loyal followers, because they have the least amount of friction in getting your word out there. So for me, I think even one or two WhatsApp groups with people who actually believe in what you are saying, and who are sort of like willing to go the extra mile for you, is actually powerful enough. And then when you sort of transition to Instagram and Facebook, there are the number of followers matter because it unlocks certain things for you, right? So for example, if you want to be a verified profile, then what the platforms will look for is, do you have a certain number of followers or not, are you famous enough, and all of that stuff. So then that 1,000 plus or 5,000 plus mark starts to matter. But again, right, it's because these platforms are used by billions of people. As you said, there might be 2 million people, 20 million people with 10,000 plus followers. So then how are you
Yeah.
how are you the unique individual with 10,000 followers? So I would say that especially people who are starting out, or people who are early in their creator journeys, don't focus too much. I would say my sort of guidance or my suggestion would be, not spend too much time on essentially thinking I need X number of followers, or 10,000, 15,000, 20,000, 5,000. Just focus on people that are your followers. Do they actually believe in what you are saying? Are they helping you get your word out there? Right. So I think for both Facebook and Instagram, I think the more people share your work with others, the more beneficial it is in terms of algorithm as well for you. So you might have 100,000 followers, and this is a very real problem, right? A page might have 100,000 followers, 200,000 followers, a million followers, but if it doesn't get enough engagement with it, then that followership is actually not very useful, because the algorithm of those platforms think that that this content is not very useful to people that are seeing it, right? So instead of actually focusing on, let me quickly increase the number of followers, I would much rather have people focus on, am I creating the right type of content that my current followers like, right? So staying in touch with them. I think one of the things that they could do is essentially try and engage with whatever small number of followers you have, and it's actually better when you have a smaller number of followers, right? Host Q&A sessions with them, ask what they would like to read more about, what content would they like to see more from you, which helps you build that relationship with the followers where they won't feel that this is a one-way communication. It's actually a two-way relationship that you are building with your followers. So I would say focus less on numbers. On platforms like WhatsApp, make sure that you have a loyal group of followers. On platforms like Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, try and engage with your followers so that you are building a community. And then at the same time, then you can use platforms like ScrollStack, where you actually can have deeper, more engaging, you can produce more engaging content that your followers can essentially engage with, right? So that is what if I were a creator today, starting out, or having started out a couple of years ago, starting to build out my strategy, that's how I would approach that, Samir. So I think so, Samir, I'm now going to turn this question around. And you've had
Yeah.
years and years of experience in media, right? And you know the media space well, you know the journalism space well. How does that sort of like, how does the same phenomenon or the same platforms play out when you are not necessarily a creator who's writing or sort of creating different things, but when you are a journalist, or when you are, when you actually want to, be in the media space, like, would you say things
Yeah.
work differently, or do things work in a similar way?
Yeah. So before I answer that, again, a reminder to everybody who's watching to start posting questions. And I was going to throw a question at you, but I'll answer first question and then we will sort of go through that. So I think two things, right? One is that a lot of people want to actually create and control their audience before they can, charge people for it and use some of what the new fangled terminology around the creator economy and passion economy has come through. So I think the world of media has this interesting crisis that while there is larger and larger audience, advertising rates are following. It's really hard to sell advertising. So media actually might be the early adopter of these creator platforms, though because the here and now need of collapsing revenues on one side, right? So as individuals who are in the media business, I think one of the things you already know that people like, I think, are very active on Twitter, and maybe the next biggest thing for media folks is Instagram. And again, what I see happening is that media's challenges with revenue would probably make it the fastest adopter. And I think if you are an individual in this business, and you are probably better off, having much tighter control over the people who are your fans, right? There is that theory of your true 1,000 fans, whether you're a writer or a podcaster. I think, yeah, so my sense is that if you're not thinking about this and you're in the media business, you have a big challenge.
Got it. Makes sense. Great.
Okay, so one of the questions I saw somebody post is essentially, how does this compare with in the past? If people really wanted to do this, they would have made their own website or would have created their own, why should they be on another platform? Isn't ScrollStack another platform that now controls my destiny?
Got it. Yeah. So I think that's a very tall ask to be able to be in control of someone's destiny. So I think hopefully we don't want to, be in the control of anybody's destiny. We actually want to, turn that around, right? The way we have thought about ScrollStack is we want everybody to be in charge of their own destinies, right? So instead of the platform being responsible for that, we actually want to make sure that we are giving you tools and features and a platform where you are able to express yourself in the best possible way. You don't necessarily have to conjure things together in order to be successful, and then do with hit whatever you want to be. So let me sort of like take that as an example. Let's say you are someone who's passionate about comic books, But instead of creating superhero comic books or mythology comic books, you actually have a very different take on it, right? You actually believe that there are lots of things happening in our daily lives that are best described by drawing and sort of giving voice to these interesting characters that you see on a day-to-day basis. Now, if you're a creator that way and you try and go find somebody who's willing to take a bet on this, publish a comic book, bring this out in physical forms, put this in bookstores, all of that, it's actually impossible for somebody to go through that route for something that they believe in passionately, are really good at, but actually see the light of day if you try to go through a traditional route. But what a platform like ScrollStack allows you to do is there is zero cost of you actually starting out. You don't have to go and buy a domain and create a website and hire somebody to create a website and do all of this. You can actually go ahead and get dailycomic.scrollstack.com as your website. I'm sure you use something to sketch your comic books. You can actually start to upload those with whatever descriptions that you see fit within a couple of minutes on ScrollStack, and you can start sending the links out to your comic books to everybody in the world, and they'll be able to see them without having to go through any hassles at all, right? So we've actually given shape to something that you would have struggled to in real world, but with a platform like ScrollStack, you are able to sort of go from somebody who nobody knows to someone who is putting out these comic books on a daily basis with things that they see around them. Next thing you know, 15 days, a month later, you actually build up readership. You start to become known, right? And at that stage, you actually might be approached by either a well-known publishing house or another online publication, or you actually start to build out your own strong audience across social media, and you take off from that, right? So that is actually something that ScrollStack is really well designed for, is taking all the friction, all the cost prohibitiveness out of your experience as a creator on the web today, for you to be able to start very quickly and actually go on the way, go on your way, and give shape and sort of like voice to work that otherwise wouldn't be possible. And then again, monetization kicks in and all of that whenever you are sort of ready to do that. So it's essentially giving yourself, putting you in charge of your own destiny versus somebody else being in charge of that destiny.
Yeah. So Nikhil has a question, and his question, if I'm saying it right, is I just wrote an ebook. How can I market it? Uh, and so okay, I will take this question because it's a passion area for me, because this is one of the big uses of ScrollStack that I've been personally pushing. Because to contextualize the question for everybody, one of the biggest things is that if you've written a book, it really is very difficult to get it out into bookshops. It is really hard to get noticed on Amazon. And it is quite a surprising thing that it is not possible for authors to at least offer as one channel their book from their own personal website, right? So like for any other product, and I hesitate to call book a product because for most authors it is more than that. But if for a moment we hold that as the goal that we want to market it, I think the thing to do is the same thing, right? It goes back to what we said in the beginning, to find your 1,000 true fans who really want to follow and pay for your work, right? So I'm not saying you ignore the usual distribution of books. You should find a publisher if you can. You should be on Amazon and Kindle and all of that. But I think a huge missing opportunity, Nikhil, is the fact that you probably have your own followers and people who are willing to pay for it. So I would say that every author, every book should have a URL, was one of the things we had written long back. Every author should have their ability to directly allow people to, click one button and buy their book, right? For a Kindle or for any other way of getting it. So, and then if your question was more about how to create an audience for it, how do I get the word out, then all the classics of publishing apply, right? It needs to say something new. It needs to have a way that it can surf what is happening on social media, right? There are two great cycles that happen every day now, which is, one is the news and the entire world of what's happening in the world, and the other is the world of social media where things are getting shared, which may not necessarily be related to this, right? So anybody who's engaging with the world will need to figure out where does their conversation fit in the larger conversation. And of course, book folks don't tend to think about it this way, which is good for us, because obviously books can have take 10 years before people find, oh, this is something very relevant, right? This is not so I would say that there is still an opportunity, however long term your vision for your book is, to engage with your fans in a direct way, make it very easy for them to get your book, access your book, and that's the way I would think of it.
Got it.
Nikhil, any? Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I think Nikhil, if you have follow-ups, please post in the uh, comment section. I think for everybody else who's listening as well, if you have any questions for Samir and I, please post them in the comment section wherever you are watching them, so that we are able to read the questions and get them answered. If we don't have too many questions, we'll always end early. But if you have questions, we want to make sure that we get to them and we don't end the session before that. So, Samir, I think one of the other questions that I think we should sort of like try and tackle as well. So that question essentially is that a lot of people write not because they want to monetize, but they want to make sure that their whatever they're passionate about gets to as many people as possible. Right. So I think one of the things that we should tackle essentially, and again, I would love to hear your perspective on it, and I can share mine as well. If you think that changes anything when it comes to sort of like how you create and where you create and how you sort of go about it, right? If monetization is not your primary objective, then does your strategy change, right? Like, do you need to think about brand building your brand differently?
Yeah. So I think this is one of the biggest learnings of the last 8-10 years of the internet, where, like I said, there are two giant engines that are driving it, right? The act of sharing, and people tend to share things that they are passionate about, that make them look intelligent, like make them look funny. There are a few things, behaviors on sharing, that are very well understood now, right? And everybody understands this instinctively, but I think translating that into how you write is something that hasn't actually as widely adopted, right? So what I mean by that is that, if, for example, if you were writing an article today, it is very typical in old media to actually make the title of that article, the headline of an article, the summary of what is in that piece, right? Saying, for example, Amazon's chief Bezos has decided to become executive chairman, right? That's a very boring way of writing. It's a summary of what the story is. But yesterday I saw a headline: Amazon Bezos chief resigns at a moment when his overall his wealth is 16 million times that of a median income earner in America, right? And you might think it's like, and sort of, since this is a off the top of my head example and sort of clickbaity, but it's not about clickbait, right? It is about actually finding the nugget and insight in that story. So I think that's something that a lot of news companies did, but news is like 1% of the consumption of content online. That, you know that. So 99% of the world has not yet fully tapped into the idea of, what does it mean to write for social media audiences without getting into the clickbait world. And then the second thing is the blocking and tackling. A lot of, like, again, going back to Nitin's question on books, right? How many books can you find if you Google search them, even when they are most relevant, right? It's Google is doing all the hard task of trying to, do the keywords and do the, and Amazon is, right? But authors are not yet, right? Authors are not, um, uh, you know, benefiting from the unique voices they may have developed over a period of time. So if I take a topic on which somebody, only one person tends to write all the time, and if I search them, it is unlikely that I will directly hit the author. I'm likely to find either Amazon or something else. So I think over the next 4 or 5 years, you will start seeing creators make their web presence and their footprint much more easy to get to, either on social, on search, right? Whatever the social and search platforms may be 5 years from now.
Got it. All right. So we have questions from one of our regular creators, Nitin. Hey, Nitin. He's asking what are ScrollStack's plans for its community features, especially from the perspective of scaling reach. So, Samir, do you want to take this, or do you want me to sort of take it?
Ha. Yeah, this both of us can take it. But I the short answer to that is that community features is our next big thing that is coming down the pike. There are a few things that you will see. I will let Ritesh declare what are the Ritesh is the master of how we will roll it out. But I'll tell you the big things that you will see. Number one is of course follow and being able to push out your content to your followers, and we believe that the primary method or axis of doing that in India and many parts of the world is not email, and it is WhatsApp, it is messaging, it's Signal, it's all of that. So that's why we are taking our time to make sure that when we do it's sort of designed for our world. We will have email, of course, the given. Second is that we are going to also roll out at least one new way of you getting paid, which we think is I think of it as a community feature that followers will be able to support your work even if you don't have a locked post, and you are able to, but you are doing something that your fans are willing to support. So that's the second big thing that will come. And I think the third thing really is that you are already seeing. So Nitin, for example, you are part of a books community, right? So the third level of abstraction where we are seeing already, wherever we are seeing traction of a bunch of creators, we have created that community ourselves, and we are pushing that, right? So there is a books community, there's a Hindi writers community, there's a business writers community. There are a bunch of communities that are finding scale on ScrollStack, and we'll continue to build and market that, because that's where um, all the people who are passionate about that topic will start aggregating.
Got it. Yeah, I have nothing to add. I think Samir has covered this pretty well. So yeah, I think I'll only add. The only thing I will add is, I guess, this is something that I'm very excited about, because uh, every creator should have their own community, and also they should be part of a larger community of other creators as well, which is how we can sort of make sure that the entire ecosystem is actually progressing really well. So I'm excited about the work that we're doing in this space. All right, we have another very interesting observation and a question that's come in. I'll actually read this out for people, and then try to take a crack at it. Studio 41 podcasts are sort of saying that all the social media networks and platforms such as Patreon and ScrollStack have realized that a lot of time and effort is spent on promoting my work, time which I would rather spend on making the podcast, which is absolutely true. Any tools or apps that you would recommend to make this process easier, or if there is any strategies that can be used, right? So I think this is one of those very, this is one of those things where if you can make the job of a creator easier when it comes to spreading the word, I think this is, that's essentially like a painkiller that's needed right now, versus a nice to have vitamin. So I think that's what you are asking is a very pertinent and important problem that we are also looking to solve through ScrollStack as well, right? So I think first thing, in terms of external things that you could be doing, right? So I think you might already know about this, but Canva is a fantastic tool that makes your life so much easier when it comes to promoting your work, by making the work look beautiful and giving you the variety of options that you can use for free, so that your work actually looks great across all social media, right? So I think for every creator who's not using Canva yet, I think that's absolutely something that every creator should use, and sort of make sure that you are essentially using the templates of Canva to make your work look beautiful and stand out before you send it to your followers. I think and then in terms of other things that could be done, right? So I think it's also responsibilities of platforms like ScrollStack to make sure that we are making this easier for you, right? So this is, while it is early days, but we can't share too much here in terms of what we are doing to make this easier for you, but you should know that this is one of the key problems that we are solving on ScrollStack, where whatever you create on ScrollStack, we want to make sure that first of all, we make it very easy for you to get their work out to your followers wherever they are, without you actually having to spend a lot of time. So stay tuned for that, so that the platform is actually doing some amount of work for you, so that you don't have to go and do this in a lot of different areas. The second thing is the platforms also need to make sure that we are giving you tailored approaches to how this work should look on what platform, right? So what works on WhatsApp doesn't necessarily work on Facebook, right? So platforms will also need to get smarter. Right now you are doing this, but I think it's also the challenge that platforms need to solve, where we will need to get smarter about what you share on WhatsApp needs to look different than what you share on Facebook, and it should be different for Instagram as well. So again, these are some of the things that we are currently working on. As in when we get closer to sort of like the time of us rolling this out, we'll actually share more details with you. But stay tuned. It's one of those things that we actually want to make sure that we are good at solving for sure. And it is a huge
And
pain
I
point
would
for
add,
creators.
yeah, and I was going to add another podcast specific tool worth looking at. In addition to Canva, so Canva for marketing, and I think there's another tool you guys should definitely be looking at is a tool called Descript, Descript. And the reason that it can be useful, and again I go back into my thing, that if your work needs to be discovered, one of the biggest problems podcasts face today, right? There are literally a million podcasters as of last year on Apple and Spotify and so on. And one of the things we have been encouraging everybody on ScrollStack to do is, again, it's a question of channels. You should absolutely be on Spotify and Apple and all of that, but you should have direct reach to create to your followers as well. And this script as well as Canva both fit into being, not only being able to do more with how you're seen on social. So the way I would think of Canva is, that's what you should be posting, one button click. Some of these features will help you, and the script will actually help you with search engine, because what it does is it auto transcribes and also allows you to transcribe with some interventions. You should take a look at that, because one of the things you can do uniquely on ScrollStack, and I'm not just pushing this for ScrollStack, but as podcasters, you need to be able to do is uh, is actually have a description of your podcast so that search engines also find it, right? Otherwise, you're totally dependent on the discovery mechanism of Spotify and Apple, and you're going to be lost in the 1 million podcasts there are, right? Only 1% on that is going to get any attention. So I would say Canva plus ScrollStack plus Descript should be your answer for pushing podcasts.
All right. So we have the next question from Anshul. Hey, Anshul. Anshul and I used to work together back at Facebook. And he's also one of the creators on ScrollStack. So good to have you here. His question is, with so many options available today to create your personal brand, your own website, Facebook page, group, WhatsApp, ScrollStack, where should one start? How to decide the content strategy for each? Anshul, I wish you were on video. I could have actually asked you as well, because I know you've also gone through this journey. But I'll essentially give you sort of my take on it, right? And then also let Samir chime in if he has anything to add. So I think this is there is no one right answer to this, right? And Anshul, you know this, having spent years at Facebook as well. There is no right answer to this, where this is where you start and this is how you progress. I think I sort of like tried to hint at this at the beginning, which is you should actually go to the place where you think you have the most loyal following, right? So if you think that WhatsApp is where you have the most loyal following, I would say invest more time there and then graduate to other platforms. If you're a journalist, then obviously Twitter is the best place for you to be, because that's where the most loyal following might be. So I think it really depends on, for you as a creator, which platform works best for you to essentially have built that following. I think platforms like ScrollStack are great for you to graduate that following that you are building to a platform where deeper engagement is possible, right? So for example, on Facebook, it's more difficult for people to actually see all the work that you have created and have time to consume, because on Facebook, people are not on Facebook to actually read longer pieces, engage with a creator's more work from a single creator. It's essentially scroll, right? So unless you have a fantastic thing that can grab the attention in that millisecond that takes us to scroll up or down, you're gone, right? So I think that's where some of the headlines will come into play. But I think ScrollStack is an option for you to have that person build a deeper engagement with what you have to say and what you want to do. So I think these platforms, I don't think it's an either or. I would say in terms of reach and brand building, start with platforms that you think give you the best bang for your buck, where you think you have the most loyal following, instead of going for numbers, and then bring those people to platforms like ScrollStack or Patreon or Substack or Medium, wherever you choose choose to sort of like do a lot of your in-depth work, to have that graduation process happen, to build a deeper level of engagement, and to start to sort of like build your build your monetization strategy, and essentially control your own destiny, because you have more control than social media on platforms like this. So I think that's how I would look at it, Anshul. All right. So, Samir, those were all the questions that we had. So we've actually gotten through all the questions. So if you have any closing thoughts, I think we should do that, and then we can end the session for today.
No, so I was just going to just build on what the question Anshul asked, and then we can end. Is that in a way what the world is like? You are trying to create a funnel, which is the tool we are trying to provide, right? The top of the funnel will be these big social media brands that have ginormous reach. If you're a photographer, the answer is Instagram. If your followership is like deeply friends and that circle, is probably Facebook. And what we are, the argument for ScrollStack, Patreon, and others is that there is a next year in the funnel when you want to graduate, as Ritesh put it, from people who kind of read you based on when the algorithm gods are happy, to people who always read you. And then there is the next end of the funnel, which is that not only they read you all the time, but they are willing to pay for you, right? So there's a casual reader, registered reader, and a paying reader. And what we are doing is, and what platforms that are emerging now are platforms that give you that funnel out of the box. The top of the funnel, we think for a foreseeable future, will remain the big social media platforms. And then the question you have, do you want to graduate from that in addition to that, not in lieu of that?
Excellent. All right. So with that, thank you everybody for tuning in. This was not planned for Samir and I to interact, but I think unplanned things tend to be more fun usually. So I'm glad that we have this opportunity to sort of interact with some of you guys, and hope you guys got something out of it. Let us know how it went through the standard channels of feedback. And then we will try and reschedule Rishad's session, which was originally planned at this time, which some of you might have turned out to view. So stay tuned for the rescheduled sessions. We have other more exciting masterclasses coming up in future weeks as well. So hope to see you guys around. Thank you very much. Have a great evening, night, day, wherever you are. And come join us on ScrollStack if you are not already on. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.